Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Eric Uneg. I'm the Vice President of Technology here at Convergent, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's session. We've got a great topic for you today. Our panel today is with us to talk about how AI and computer vision is being leveraged to transform security and business outcomes across organizations all over the world. So this is going to be a 1 hour discussion, 45 minutes with the panel here, and then kind of 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. Feel free along the way to pose questions, ask questions as they come to you in the chat, and we'll try to field those as they're relevant. So before I ask the panelists to introduce themselves, I just wanted to frame kind of the discussion that we're having here today. This is an area that's really personally a passion of mine and exciting for me. The whole theme of the Insight conferences around digital transformation, and AI and computer vision is one of the most, at least in my view, one of the most transformational technologies that we have that's impacting every industry, use cases all over the world right now, in bringing new outcomes and delivering new value to organizations all over the place. And it's really incredible to think that we're approaching this point in human history that we can turn almost anything we see into data using computer vision technology, and we can take action on that data. We can trend it over time, and importantly, from a digital transformation perspective, we can we create better customer experiences, we create better employee experiences, and we just generally bring an entirely new reality to life that we've all been kind of seeing on the horizon now for a period of time. So it's really exciting stuff. And to discuss all this, I'm joined today by a great panel. So gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. Thanks for taking time out of your schedules to share your expertise and thoughts with the audience. So let's start by just giving us a little bit of your background, introductions on who you are, what your areas of responsibility, and the organizations that you work for. Adam, you're to the right of me on the screen here, so I'm going to ask you to kick it off.
All right, thanks, Eric. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm Adam Scrabba. I lead marketing for Nvidia's effort in bringing AI and sort of new computing methods to build smarter infrastructure, and that spans literally like a dozen sort of segments covering public safety, airports, factory, automation in industries, campus security, smart cities, traffic, you name it. And we've been at this for, it's been over 7 years that we've been applying and sort of cultivating an ecosystem around, the beginnings of using deep learning and AI to apply it to video. From the start, we kind of knew that computer vision and video and imagery was such a powerful IoT sensor. It's the most widely deployed sensor that we have, frankly. I think there's about 1 billion cameras now deployed on Earth, covering a lot of square inches of our spaces. And so we're well on our way on a journey. I think we're still in the early stages of the journey, which I think is part of what our conversation will be about. But yeah, super excited to be part of this and join you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate that. Mark, you care to go next, please?
Yeah, Eric, thank you. It's great to be part of this panel. I am the transportation manager for Border States Electric. We're one of the largest electrical distributors in the world. And the other hat that I wear is I have the good fortune of being able to help with the design and implementation of our security systems across the company, with Convergent being a great partner of ours. We've been fortunate enough to be in the world of AI. Sometimes you don't even know you're in the world of AI, which I think is kind of unique. Things are happening. You don't understand maybe that they're happening the way they should be. But I think I have some interesting things to talk about in terms of how we're using the technology as it relates to the transportation world. So I'm looking forward to that.
Great, thanks, Mark. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And echo the comments from the other panelists. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about some of this amazing technology, which, as Mark said, sometimes we don't even know we're consuming or using it. And I remember meeting Adam probably about 4 years ago now, going out to Nvidia's world headquarters, and just going, wow, our world's going to change. We don't know so many things. We're going to learn all these things and, be expected by our customers to deliver upon it. And that's my role now, right? I'm the executive director of business development efforts for our digital transformation team. It's fun and exciting that Convergent's formed this team that specifically talks and helps our customers with these conversations. So it's exciting times. Love talking about this stuff and looking forward to the conversation today, Eric.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. I had the pleasure of introducing the Insights keynote speaker today, Michelle Polino from Forrester Research, and she spent an hour really just describing, macro digital transformation trends, right? Like what is happening in the world and the underlying technologies, and it is really fascinating to think. When you put digital transformation in the context of that fourth industrial revolution, right? And you think about, what were those prior three? You're thinking about, changes for the world on par with, electricity and the mechanization of manufacturing and just enormous world changing trend, that fundamentally changed the way the world operated, right? They changed the way people related to one another, work got done, and those were trends that took, almost 100 years, those first couple to unfold. And to think that really what we're talking about here, the theme of our conference is digital transformation, and this being one of those key enabling technology that we're going to see really live through that magnitude of change in the world in the next, in our lifetimes, right? We're going to see this, we're going to watch it unfold really probably the next, few years, 5-10 years, where huge amounts of this change is going to be implemented. And so I think it's really exciting. And I just, I continue when I hear people like Michelle discuss, how broad these changes are, how many vertical markets, every vertical market, the number of use cases, the types of, transformative outcomes that are being delivered. I think it's really powerful. And, to bring it down for us here in this conversation, I think people hear digital transformation now and they kind of hear the buzzword, right? They hear, oh, geez, everybody's talking about that. What does it really mean? And I think AI, computer vision is one of those areas that certainly has a lot of that. It's a hugely hot topic, right? We all, in our world, we focus on this every single day almost, but there's a lot of noise around it. And so I'm just curious for all three of you, maybe if you can just give us just a broad, high level answer on just how, your organizations are just seeing AI and computer vision in general. Is this, something that we're investing in? Is this something that organizations are spending time focusing on? How do we harness this? At a practical level? Adam, I'll start with you because I know your answer certainly is yes, but just sort of how do you see it, in your context right now?
Sure. Well, I think the way we look at it, we always, I tend to, and our team certainly tends to sort of think from a problem out. We'll sort of fall in love with the problem and then figure out, how the technology maybe applies to it. There's just no question. I think there's, we sometimes, even on the group of us on this panel, we've talked about it before. We live in sort of an online world where a lot of people understand what's happening with what we do, but in the physical world, there's just a ton of operational efficiency and safety, gains and problems to go and solve. Whether whether your big asset is a piece of real estate, whether you're a real estate investment firm needing to understand how many eyeballs or humans are walking past it at any given hour, if it's a retail store, understanding sort of how a customer experience is, how a customer journey is playing out. There's just so many really important problems to go and solve. Never mind, just classic public safety, understanding threats as fast as you can, and all that stuff. So there's the problem is huge. I do think that we're on a very early journey of this. We often, so Nvidia is involved in a lot of crazy and interesting products and solutions and technologies. Autonomous vehicles is one of them, and an autonomous vehicle is like a robot. And we think that probably our infrastructure will become like an autonomous space, in a smart infrastructure in the future, where there's going to be perception, there's going to be reasoning, and there's going to be action taking. Whether that's frictionless access control in a campus, those are classic things. Whether it's you name it, being able to understand in real time what's happening on a space is super important. We've got a ton of really interesting examples with work we're doing with airlines to turn aircraft around at the gate faster by just instrumenting all ground operations with cameras. But that being said, we're on the journey from arming these spaces, these smart infrastructure spaces with really good perception, thanks to computer vision and AI. We're now, that's the perception layer. We're doing a lot in the reasoning layer as well, and some of it incorporates AI as well. So now I think we haven't quite created the autonomous building of the future. I think we're very much on our way towards that. So I think we're still in the early stages. I will also say that there's another thing that's really important for us to, I think about as we think about where we are in this journey, is that we kind of, frankly, the infrastructure we have and computer vision and AI, let's kind of be honest about it. A lot of this technology is being bolted onto infrastructure. It was really, infrastructure today is primarily build it and then operate it, where those two things are quite different. I think we're going to get to a space fairly soon where these kind of sensors and these kind of, this infrastructure is going to be built being smart first, and then operated naturally. A lot of people have probably heard the concept of a digital twin, which is the idea that you kind of simulate something as well as have it. You have a physical manifestation of a robot or a factory line or a city, but you also have a simulation of it running in parallel. And you can do, if I change this, what happens? And AI and computer vision as a really important sensory level of perception layer is going to be key in that. So I think we will start to build this into our infrastructure as opposed to bolt it on.
Yeah, that's good perspective, Adam. I always like to hear you describe it. Nvidia clearly occupies a unique vantage point in the world, just at sort of the forefront of how AI is being brought to life, right? And how that the building blocks of that fourth industrial revolution future are coming to life. So, I mean, so Mark, maybe I'll ask you the same question. Just, is AI real in your world, and how does your organization think about things like computer vision?
Yeah, Eric, it's very real, and I'm going to steal one of Adam's words from yesterday: frictionless. Just if I may, Adam, if that's okay with you. I think about our procurement world, for example, and just following up the supply chain until we get to transportation. But we do take AI type notes when it comes to buying habits. When it comes to buying habits in certain parts of the country, we don't even think about it. We don't think about what happens in Nashville versus what happens in Phoenix or Denver. But we do know through some of the tools that our procurement division uses as a part of the supply chain, what those trends look like. Same thing happens on e-commerce, where we're learning habits, and people might wonder, how is that happening? Well, I think the answer is pretty clear. And if you think about something as simple as you do a search on Google for something, and then you're reading a different article, totally something unrelated, and then all of a sudden an ad pops up for maybe that grill you were looking at or whatever. I mean, those are all frictionless type events that are happening. And then I look at the world that I specifically live in, and what we're doing with AI in terms of our fleet routing, or our how we're trying to solve a major problem with AI CV, in terms of our dimension world. So it's all around, and like I said earlier, sometimes we don't even know it's happening, and it is. And that's kind of in some cases, I think it's really cool. Some cases it might be a little freaky, but it's there, it's real.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, Mark. Steve, I kick it to you. I mean, we live in the same world, and there's been a lot of interesting false starts over the years around video about analytics. Really the term 10 years ago is really about all the future of analytics. And today, I mean, I know people ask questions all the time about AI, and you have a front row seat to this. How real do you see the opportunity in your space?
Yeah, the opportunities very real. I think we're getting more inquiries, more questions about it, more how can I use this type of technology? I mean, and it's really because, as you know, I think Mark hit it on the head, right? We're consuming this technology day in and day out. We don't even realize it. One of my favorites is Sonos, right? If anybody's got a Sonos system, what Sonos is doing with their app, with their integrations, with being able to stream this video or the audio anywhere at any time through their streaming connections through an app. And that app, by the way, is using AI behind the scenes, checking what you're doing on Spotify, introducing new content, all of these types of things that is really changing the way I think our customers want and expect our systems to work and operate. And I think that's one of the key changes that sometimes we forget about. We're used to that access control system. We're used to that video system doing what it did 10 years ago, because that's just what we knew. But what we're forgetting is that a whole new consumer group is coming into our companies, and their expectations for how these technologies and the systems work mirror what happens in their consumer life, right? So as Mark described, I'm searching something in Google, I immediately get an answer. Oh, I immediately get served up something that I might be interested in. Yeah, it's a little freaky, but on the other hand, it's also providing a service to me that's getting me information more quickly, more accurately. And I think that we're seeing all of our customers at some point in time are starting to be asked some of these questions. How can I, do my core fire, life safety, security task quicker, faster, and better? How can I support my customers, my cardholders, my stakeholders, easier with less, as Mark said, less friction? I think that's going to be a common theme that we're going to hear over the next 3 years, and it's going to be very quickly, because consumers just expect that now. It's almost table stakes, whereas before, wow, they're really got their act together. Now every single one of our customers are going to expect it.
Yeah, it's a great point.
We talk to our devices all the time, right? I mean, it's like, I agree. It's daily life now is thinking about the stuff that we have as being smart.
Yeah, we've touched on this before, but with the idea of just behavioral expectations in our consumer lives, right? Really bleeding over. I think that there's another interesting question in there is really, I mean, what impact do you think, pandemic has had on that? Because I think, a lot of people would look at that and say, maybe never in the history of the world has the collective behavior of the entire planet been altered so fast at the same time than what happened through pandemic. And no one would ever, wish a pandemic on us ever again, clearly. But the impact of having, 6 billion people sort of experience behavioral change, forced behavioral change in a short period of time, I think is a fascinating collision with everything we're talking about here, right? Because everybody had to change how they're operating personally. Look what we're doing right now, right? This was not the MO a year ago. Now we're all, comfortable doing this. There's several hundred people that are doing the same thing, and we're doing this every single day. So, I mean, what an impact do you think that has on everything we're talking about here when it comes to computer vision, AI, and just the adoption of that, let's just say, that fourth industrial revolution, digital transformation trend, coming out of the last 16 months?
Eric, I'll go first on this. What I can see is, being in the supply chain business, we've had a paradigm shift where, it would not be uncommon for, some type of electrical, whether an electrician, whether a utility worker, for a period of time, they didn't come into our locations. So they would do a lot of things via e-commerce. And again, there were habits there that we learned. I mean, we learned, what that person did the last time they came in, or what they not came in, but ordered, on their phone, from a job site. We saw some of the same things, like, in the transformation of, a route that's run on a certain day. There may be other notes that are imperative, meaning don't come inside, leave it by the door, or whatever. And it's just a constant learning process, whereby that information is getting from point A to point B somehow, and it's not just magic. I mean, it's all part of the AI-driven world. So from my perspective, I'm seeing a lot of that, especially in the past year.
Yeah, and maybe a couple of perspectives from my side too. I think that we're seeing, the importance of remote sensing. Obviously we're all remote, or a lot of us are remote. So the ability to have solutions that allow you to keep your finger on the pulse remotely, I think has been important, and I think that there is a connection then to computer vision and AI. I also think too I think it's frankly put a spotlight, and there's been a lot of and there's a lot of buzz on this, but I think it has definitely put a spotlight on the importance of people in physical spaces, and just understanding not necessarily interactions between people, but just basic things like occupancy, potentially proximity. Is someone wearing a mask? Certainly there's a lot of conversation around thermal solutions, but just I think it has shone a spotlight on the importance of it. And frankly, also, we often even just talk about, there's really very complex solutions and you combine a lot of these modalities and vision and conversational speech, and you can create some pretty amazing solutions. But even just things like a fire breaks out on the third floor of a building, we often have no idea how many people we need to evacuate on that third floor. That's just like simple stuff. And I think we're still at the point where we're still kind of rolling those solutions out. So I definitely think the pandemic has sort of shone a spotlight on that a little bit.
Yeah, I know Steve and I have been in a number of conversations, the sense of urgency, right, coming out of pandemic, just the idea that, we've proven to ourselves what we can do when we make a decision to do things differently. And to me, that is one of the fundamental things that I would observe has changed, is just that choice to say, look, we've done things the same way for a long time, and that was a safe way to do things, but we've proven to ourselves in so many different ways that, get out of that way about that thinking. Look at the amount of travel saved, space saved, all these kind of things that we suddenly look at now and think, man, how do we do it this way for the last, 25 years? And now it's completely different. And I think that sense of urgency to say, well, where else are all these opportunities? What else have we just been, taking for granted as status quo is the only way to do things? And again, I think it's just a fascinating confluence of the maturing of all these technologies at the same time, where organizations particularly are just pulling apart. How do we operate? How do we think? How do we serve customers? How do we take care of our employees? All those kind of things. Steve, is there anything in your world you think there is relevant?
Yeah, Eric, I just really amplifying what everybody said, and what I've seen are our leaders in all of our organizations are understanding and recognizing that if we didn't adapt some of this technology, if we didn't change the way we were doing things, and I think you can see that in some of the results, looking at some of the financial results from Wall Street over the last year, right? Those organizations that moved digital, that adopted some of these technologies or some of these capabilities, or were able to embrace technology and change the way they operated, they tended to fare better in their financial results and their performance. They tended to gain customers. They tended to improve that customer experience. And, I've talked to Mark before, and we've talked about some, operational things, but it didn't even dawn on me all the things that Border States is doing to service their channel and their distribution, and their customers. And again, it goes back to what he said up front. There's so much of this technology that we're consuming day in and day out that we just are completely unaware of. But thankfully, I think the smart leaders are recognizing this. They're asking everybody, hey, what else can we do? To your point, Eric, what else can we, how else can we change and really think about doing our business different to become more efficient, to serve our customer better, to reduce the risks that we're exposed to, all those things that, again, as you describe it frequently, that fourth industrial revolution, changing everything that we do and how we operate. To me, it's just an amazing time to be alive right now. And I appreciate the opportunity to share some of our ideas together and just kind of talk about them, because that's quite exciting, and it stimulates more conversation with more people.
Yeah, that's great. And Steve, I think it's a great point. And I think it's just, it's challenging for me personally. The reason I like to zoom out and connect that fourth industrial revolution context is it really forces you to, it creates that sense of urgency. It forces you to think creatively. It forces you really to lean into the idea that, the unsolved problems now are solvable, right? These things that we never thought were possible are possible. The technology is really getting to a point where, we can really get at some of these fundamentally, world altering kind of things that, in the next number of years, we're really going to see a huge shift in how things operate. So let's take it down a level just on some of those use cases, right? I mean, I think we all agree AI is a real thing, that there's opportunity to get after right now. And companies are doing that, and particularly accelerated out of pandemic. But maybe Mark, I'll start with you. Let's just talk about some of the ways that, some of those use cases specifically that right now are delivering value for organizations. You've got an interesting use case there that I think people will be like to hear more about.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I'm going to have to kind of set this up a little bit so that the folks that are out there and viewing this can understand. So we as a company, we source just over 3 million SKUs, and we deal with about 8,000 vendors on a daily basis. And we're spread all over the country, do business all over the world. And so something as fundamental as a dimension or a weight into our system is critical, and it helps us determine packaging, it helps us determine shipping costs, it helps us determine myriad things that you wouldn't even think about. So when we can get that data from our vendors, it's great, but probably 60% of the time, they either don't have it or the packaging has changed or whatever. So you take, for example, like the LiDAR technology and the ability to just put a box basically inside that that frame, if you will. We have something that, multiple cameras take a picture of it, you immediately get length, width, height. There are a series of scales on the bottom, you get the weight. So it becomes a situation where you can basically take a wedge scanner, you can scan that SKU, you can put it basically on the tech, and then you get that immediate readout back to the system. And so what that does is when you're looking at something where there are multiple lines on an order, we want this technology to say, okay, hey, you need this box size or that box size because it's going to save on shipping or whatever. And I mean, all you have to do to really put that in perspective is, and I said this before, think about the number of small items you get in a very large Amazon box. We don't want that to happen in our world. It costs way too much money, and that's money that we don't want to pass on to our customers. So just infiltrating those dim weights into our system is worth millions of dollars. Sure, you can go out there with a tape measure and a scale. It would take hours. This particular piece of tech makes it very, very quick and efficient, and we're really looking forward to all of the long-term bonuses that we're going to get from that, Eric.
Mark, and specifically for the audience there, so that's a three-dimensional camera, correct? That's essentially, scanning the dimensions of those packages incoming in real time, correct? That's what I mean. In addition to the weight, you're getting, a camera that has the three-dimensional abilities to take in dimensional, information on packages arriving.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And so it's one of those deals, like it seems to be accurate to within pretty close to an eighth or a quarter of an inch, which is close enough for what we're doing. Another challenge that we run into is define quantity one. And anybody that deals in the supply chain business, is faced with that dilemma. Is quantity one the actual item, or if it comes 10 in a box? And so we're working through some of those issues with LiDAR, but I have no doubt that we'll get resolution. And then once you get to a point, if there's 10 in a box, and you take a picture of that box, let the machine do the math. If somebody's going to buy quantity one, we know what quantity one's going to measure out to be. So.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I always feel like I win the lottery when I get a quantity 10 that was shipped as a quantity 1 on something. So It's unfortunate to me you're hearing you're limiting that impossible error there. So Adam, what are some of the maybe your favorite use cases that you see being, or having big impact right now that are really starting to get traction out there in the real world.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of the solutions really come at problems from an automation standpoint. So I think some of our customers, they'll look at their processes, like Mark had mentioned, studying what are some processes that we spend a lot of time on. Maybe there's a lot of people spending a lot of waste. Like, I would rather my people spend time elsewhere. So that's one flavor. There's also, we find that there's, we kind of zoom out and there'll be dollar bills. If you kind of squint your eyes, you're seeing dollar bills going through constrained, corridors physically. That's another place that we sort of see these solutions pop up a lot. But some classic examples are that have interesting knock-on effects. So, a lot of cities want to spend hundreds and hundreds and millions of dollars getting people to manually count, how many cars turn left at this intersection at 2 p.m. And they do a study, and they run these studies as a one-off every once in a while. Super expensive, very manual, and yet they have cameras lying all over the place in those intersections. So they start to leverage AI and computer vision to not just do a study as a once-off, automated without people involved, and which are much more accurate, can be done, and then can be done 24/7, and identify pedestrians, cyclists, dangerous interactions. And lo and behold, instead of just getting a count that's a one-off count, they can now have a 24/7 situational awareness of all of their intersections in some corridor of their city, and they just get access to data that they now can take action on. And that's pretty incredible. Retail is another really great example. I mean, this is, like we've said, your e-tail experience is well understood, online purchasing, totally well understood, but the retailers have no idea what your experience is, who's in their store physically. Retail is not going away. Yeah, there's some hard times, but we're still going to go into stores. And that process of live purchasing or a brand experience is still going to remain. So we have retailers that are using asset protection. Computer vision for asset protection is a huge billions, dozens of billions of dollars a year of waste in the US that go to shrinkage in retail on razor thin margins. It's a terrible problem that AI and computer vision can help. We also have retailers that are using the same technology to understand how, as they roll out interesting marketing campaigns to certain demographics, how do they put the right product in front of the right people at the right time? So that's another interesting problem they can go and solve. Airports, airlines have a huge, both customer experience problem, but also ground operations that we're working with. Transit authorities are using this technology to understand fare evasion and then measure ways to mitigate it. So it's shocking. It's all over the place. Warehousing, factory automation, defect inspection. It's just there's anywhere where there's sort of physical automation of understanding. If you want to manage it better, you can't manage what you can't measure, and video is just such an amazing measurement tool for this.
It is fascinating, Adam. And again, that's why I love your perspective so much. As you have a very high perch, right, in the world. We're seeing where all this, where your GPUs are going to work, and your stack is going to work, and it really does challenge your mind to think about anything we can see we can turn into data, right? And I've challenged some of our customers and our innovation conversations with customers to say, look, one of the good ways to think about this is if you had your smartest person standing here and was sort of observing or optimizing, any particular part of your organization, your CEO is standing here 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. What would he be interested in? How would he change this to better serve a customer, take care of all that? And when you start really unpacking these things, it really is fascinating. Steve, what in our world, talk about an abundance of opportunity. Bringing this technology into the core fire security life safety space. Yesterday we had Billy Baker, the Chief Security Officer from Capital One, joining us. He wasn't able to be here today. What are some of those things that you see? You've been at the tip of the spear on this for Convergent. What are some of those examples?
Yeah, Eric, those examples actually are a little bit easier for a lot of us to understand and think about, because they can be real practical, real tangible effects to the bottom line. We can use the technology to identify people that we don't want on our campuses. Those people, maybe they steal from us, right? We're like, hey, we know this is a person that has, you know, we just don't want them going back to Adam's environment of that retail environment, right? And help reduce the shrink that's occurring in retail settings, right? That's real, live, true use cases that we've delivered at scale that are successful. But even just the workplace safety things, right? We see all these. I was just actually in a presentation last week that indicated that the vast majority of workplace violence issues are people that are known, right? They're people that we know we don't want on our campuses, that they've been terminated or whatever. Imagine if we could become proactive, where somebody that we know that we don't want them on our campus, we proactively alert and notify that this person is coming to one of our front doors. Imagine the improvement we could make to our security posture, the reduction in our risk level. Real life things that we can do that make tangible benefits, make our lives better, protect, save people, things that we do every single day at Convergent. And the one that Billy talked a little bit about was using some of this technology to reduce false alarms. Every security manager under the sun, false alarms are the bane of our existence, right? And it's been forever, right? Well, now we have the technology where we can really improve the scene awareness using some of the computer vision type of technology to go, well, that looks like that's just a door that's shaking in the wind, right? Or whatever that example is. So these technologies not only span, what we deem adjacent applications, but they speak directly to the core life safety, security things that we do day in and day out. Even as something as simple as searching through video faster, right? We all have all these video systems. We seldom go to those video systems, but now if we can search that video quicker, get to that end result faster, all the efficiencies that start to come into, traditional fire life safety worlds are all right at our fingertips. And those are honestly much easier to deploy, known use cases, known solution sets, things that we can bring to market very quickly, and we have done and provide real benefit right away. So it's a fun time to be a security professional right now for sure, because it used to be, well, we can't do that, right? I remember saying, oh, that's CSI, you can't do that, that's CSI. Now there are physical limits, right? So there are things that we need, garbage in is garbage out. So we have to have good video feeds. But if we have good video feeds and we train the models to do what we want it to do, our opportunity for success and high levels of accuracy are quite good.
Yeah, Steve, it is an incredible time to be in this business, really, because particularly just to be a fire security life safety practitioner in general. Fundamentally, the tools we have at our disposal now are completely different than they were, a year or 2 years ago, in terms of, really bringing the things you just described to life, right? And the things that Adam and Mark have talked about as well. And it's like sort of like going from, when you want to build a house out of Lincoln logs, you sort of have a pretty finite set of things that you can do. Or if you want to do it out of Legos, then, you kind of have this, hugely growing palette of what that might look like and the outcomes that you can drive. So we're definitely in a place where that's becoming more of a reality for us. But that it does bring up a lot of interesting challenges, though, right, on how innovation gets done. And in our world, this is Steve, you described a lot of so what we're starting to see is near-term opportunity. But when we get out into these business use cases, using computer vision across all these other areas of our customers' organizations, that collaboration. Adam, you've coined a term that I love, which is co-innovation. I just maybe you could talk a little bit about what that means from your perspective on how you're seeing these opportunities that you're describing start to come to life, right? And the difference between how some of the traditional technology versus now how organizations are embracing, innovation in general.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I think we've sort of talked about it, it's interesting. First off, I'll just address the question because a lot of people do ask, Nvidia, you guys sell hardware, you sell GPUs. Why are you in this conversation to begin with? And it is true. It's a totally a fair question, and it begs the question a lot of the times. So we feel the obligation to get involved because this is a new market, because all of what we just talked about, this is all really new stuff. Like everything if we summarized everything we just described, we're in an amazing place with amazing new capabilities, and we're trying to identify what are those killer problems to go and solve with this. And so we get involved with building an ecosystem of, our ecosystem right now, building on our platform is like 600 plus specialists that do very specialized things with computer vision and AI. And so we have to build an ecosystem, and we have to figure out what is the go-to-market, how do we package this up, how do we work with Convergent to take this and create bespoke solutions for people with incredibly impactful and important problems to go and solve. So we have to go end to end. So I'll just lay that out there. That's why we're part of this conversation. But the conversation how AI gets done gets super existential. We often will work with and customers, go to market partners, and just ask, like, what is your core value to the world? Like, where do you want to spend most of your time? Because we have a whole bench of really powerful ecosystem partners with existing solutions that may or may not apply to your problems. And so we sort of work from the point of view of, like, do you want to make or buy a solution? Do you want to develop it yourself? Which I'll touch on, because I think there's some amazing developments on even all of you on watching us, and Convergent and included, and Mark and Billy and everyone. We now actually are in this point where we can actually start to have a development conversation with you. You might say to me, Adam, that's crazy. I'm not an AI person, I'm not a data scientist, I'm not a computer vision expert. That's fine. The tools have matured so much right now that that's an important conversation to have. But we also have this amazing set of ecosystem partners. So there's a lot of matchmaking that happens. We are involved in a lot of vetting of applications, of apps, of solutions, and so we spend a lot of time, and we spend a lot of time with Convergent, with your teams, talking through, for this kind of a problem, who should we bring to bear? What's the regional support of this company? What are they good? How cost effective might they be? So we kind of we spend a lot of time thinking through that, and because frankly, a lot of our go-to-market, a lot of the hurdles, and we haven't even got to the hurdles part of our conversation yet, but packaging, I think, for these solutions is a problem. So we're keenly aware of this. But getting to the development aspect, I think it's fair to say that in a lot of scenarios, an existing solution sometimes just doesn't cut it. Customization happens, right? Customization is required. Steve, you mentioned it, garbage in, garbage out. AI, frankly, is like a brain, and the brain, that neural network, had to be trained on something. And if that brain wasn't trained on how you want to go and deploy it, the accuracy, the performance, the efficacy of that solution might not be great. So we do see that customization tends to come up every once in a while, and there's this new movement in AI that is not new, but it's a movement that is being embraced because the tools are maturing, which is this idea of transfer learning. And the simply put, the good example is we don't send elementary kids to medical school to become doctors. We raise up a generalist, we put them through university, college, and then we send them to a medical school that is their brains are more of a fully formed brain that you specialized in some medical specialist vector. That's really very similar to what's happening now. All big AI giants, Facebook, Google, everyone, Nvidia, we all use transfer learning because it's effective. You take a pre-trained brain that has some level of understanding of something, could be conversational AI, maybe it learned English, you want to teach it German, maybe it's computer vision that understands a certain environment, but you take it to a different region and it needs to be trained. That's a whole process where we're seeing that you don't have to be an AI expert to leverage the magic of AI and put them into solutions. So that's
a great point, Adam. I think there's a lot of parallels to sort of how the internet came around, right? You think about sort of, well, geez, I'm not a network engineer, I can't connect to the internet, I can't. But then it reached a point of maturity where,
right,
look, all these things are possible now. I really do see. I remember Steve mentioned it the first time we were, visiting with you guys, maybe 4 years ago. It's just like, wow, we're not data scientists. How do we kind of get after all this? And just to see the change and the maturity there. Steve, I think that what Adam just described really highlights a challenge and an opportunity for us as we've, leaned into some of these opportunities early on in our team with digital transformation, and you in particular have seen, and helped us lead through this. What's been your experience with how we help, get these things launched and maybe, lead into Mark on his opportunity there.
Yeah, Eric, I think one of the common themes that I see is this really need for collaboration, right? So Adam had touched on it a little bit, that there's a lot of capabilities with this technology, and Nvidia does a great job, right? They enable this basic tool set that's available to really anybody to go play with. But when you start thinking about that and you want to deploy and scale that technology across hundreds and thousands of locations. I was on a call yesterday with, another one of our customers, and they're like, we just don't have the time. We have all these other organizational objectives and goals, yet we're 100% interested. And so what's evolved from Convergent, from that first time we met Adam, and I'm like, wow, this is like mind-blowing stuff, is we're really seeing this an extension of our service capabilities, right? So what is Convergent? We're core, first and foremost, a service company. We understand how we can bring value, how we identify maybe like a business case or a business justification, so we can help with that process. But then we can help scale, we can help to support, and we provide that same level of consistency from, throughout life, right? We take that burden off of an organization that, yes, they can go do that. Some do. Some would rather just kind of say, hey, how can we collaborate together on this? And that's what I think has been the real change that's been happening over probably the last 6 months, is an acceleration and an acknowledgement that what Adam just described with these training kits, these ability for people like us to provide that service element to continue to improve how that model is working in the field, which has always been the case, honestly, right? That's always been the case. But now that's exposed to people like us, so we can take the strength of our service, bring that forward, help a customer get immediate benefit, get that improvement in their performance. And I think that's been one of the fun things, as I've gotten to go Mark a little bit on some of his unique examples, that, again, I never would have thought about a lot of the things that he deals with day in and day out. And I think his unique position of being a camera guy with his security hat, and then, he also has this other small job of taking care of logistics for this huge organization with all these offices and locations, put him in a great position to, maybe connect some dots that some of our more traditional security people wouldn't have been able to do as maybe quite as quickly.
Yeah. Mark, maybe you can help us with that a little bit. The business case behind this, right? I mean, you identified an opportunity. I think we've done maybe a pilot there. And I think that's another thing that Steve alluded to, is just the concept of really just testing, quick, let's test, fail, try some things and see if we can validate these business cases. How in your situation did you get buy-in for this, this experiment to go forward, if you will?
Well, I'm going to take a little different approach to answer that, Eric.
Well, that's not acceptable, Mark.
Well, okay. I'll beg for forgiveness later. How's that? When I look at three things that are top of mind in the transportation logistics world, number one would be something as simple as onboard event recorders. And I'm not going to plug the company we use, but the technology that we use is constantly learning, which ultimately ends up in a very helpful way, aids our coaching, at the driver supervisor level. It brings drivers home safely at night, and it mitigates tons of unwarranted costs. So when you think about that, and you think about the ROI attached to that, and how do I justify that? Steve made the comment earlier, people say, I don't have time to do this. Well, when you start looking at the millions of dollars associated with, the claims that we get hit with or potentially get hit with, I would say maybe you don't have time not to do some of these things. And the same would be true on, the example that I cited. If something is costing you a lot more money and you can bring to the table a solution, bring the right people that are important in your organization to the table, and help them to understand what that solution means, just in terms of dollarizing that particular solution, The people that are above me, the true leadership of this company, they understand one thing. They understand what something costs and when we can save money. And I mean, there's no question about that. So, I mean, this stuff is all around us. It's all you have to do, and we talked about this yesterday, you need to get the right people at the table. You need to start small, add people as necessary. And then if you truly have an application where, you're looking to put an ROI on something or to dollarize the savings, in terms of what we're doing right now, the three top things that are on my plate, it is not a hard concept to get your arms around and make happen.
That's great, Mark. I think you said this yesterday, but it's just this whole start small and move fast, right? I mean, that concept in this area really resonates right now, that because the dollars are there, right? I mean, as you described that, I think that's a universal language, right? Of cost savings and driving revenue opportunity, and whatever industry we're in, finding those opportunities and making that case when you can be intentional about where do these technologies really drive that real value into an organization, not just from an outcome perspective, but driving real bottom line impact in some of these areas that weren't previously possible. What do we're down to less than 10 minutes here. Maybe the one last broad question for each of you is, what's hindering adoption right now or slowing this as you see it from your perspective, and what are your best recommendations on overcoming that? Adam, I'll start with you.
Sure. I would say that pretty simple for me is packaging. I think that that we have the whole conversation around AI and computer vision. Frankly, this is mature. I think that it works. We've got a huge wealth of deployments, examples, ecosystem, hardware, software. I think though, because it's still new, I think we have not done a great job packaging it up to make it easy to purchase, to have a conversation with our customers. So I think, I think that's actually incumbent on Convergent and Nvidia and our customers to work together on this. I think it's packaging from my perspective.
Yeah, Steve.
I think it's I'm going to call it education, and so making or just getting people to think about it, right? Eric, you alluded to it earlier. Many of us have, kind of seen some of the early generations of, basically pixel-based analytics, right? And those pixel-based analytics didn't work very good. They were hard to deploy, didn't really have the ability to improve or scale over time. I think a little bit of that's a challenge, but then just people stopping to think and then, connecting, and Mark alluded to it, is getting the right people at the table. I mean, if you get the right people at the table, you have some open conversations, things go well. But it's that educational piece that I see as a major area. And that's honestly why I'm really happy we kind of formed and structured the Insights Conference around innovation, right? Taking our position in the market as leaders, just stimulating conversation, all kinds of questions. That's great, because that's what I think it's going to take to move the ball forward.
Yeah, good point. Mark?
I'm gonna pile on just a little bit to Steve, and I'm gonna use a different word, but for me, it's understanding and comprehension. I think we have to make sure that people understand and comprehend this type of technology, but they need to be at the right level. It's pretty easy for a top level executive to hear something passing by and say, hey, we should look at that. And at the same time, those of us that are maybe down a few notches, we're going great guns, and we are, as a matter of fact, in a number of different scenarios as it relates to AI. And so, what would really help is that we have a level of understanding and comprehension at higher levels, and that AI isn't just a two buzzwords that people like to throw around, but for us, in what I do every day, they actually mean something, and we're moving forward very quickly.
Yeah, for our audience, in our last question here, what would you relay to the audience that you wish you knew starting your AI computer vision journey that you could pass on as wisdom for those out there? I mean, we've all, learned a lot. You've all learned a lot on this call. You've seen things, you've made mistakes, right? I mean, you've done things a different way. It sort of builds on our question a minute ago, what are the hurdles? But, I just from each of your perspectives, what is it that you think, you wish you knew from the beginning when you started all of this that, would be helpful for others?
I'm gonna take first stab at this. I'm gonna go back to something I said earlier, and I truly believe this. When you've got something you don't understand, you think that there is safety in numbers, and that is absolutely the wrong approach in my opinion. What you need to do is you need to look at all the various adaptations that are available that apply to your core competencies, and you need to do that with the most direct and learned group that you can go forward with, and capitalize on that. When it's appropriate, then bring in perhaps the next level or the next layer. There are tons of people that need to sit at these kinds of tables, but you don't want them all there because you end up, trying to puff your chest and say, well, I know more about AI than you do, kind of thing, and it just, so again, start small, be quick, and comprehend and apply that to whatever your core competency is in your industry.
Good.
Eric, Eric, I'll go. And for me, it's life cycle management, right? So it's the speed and pace at which all this technology is changing is even more rapid than I estimated. And I mean, I'm sure Eric or Adam can tell us a little bit about kind of what Nvidia sees from a development cycle and all of that. But that is, wow. I just kind of look back and think about how the speed of the processing, the software capabilities, just the rapid development that's occurring. That's something that I've really taken away in the last few years.
Adam?
I would say, my answer to this is sort of, I guess, echoing a little bit of what Mark said. I think join forces with partners that either have been there before you or can offer a really important perspective on the problem you're trying to solve. And frankly, if I reflect on the problem that I'm trying to solve with our team and even as a company, we want to make an impact, and we want to make an impact on problems that matter to our clients and customers. And I think partnerships where we can understand the market better, understand how to have the conversations. Mark and Steve, you both mentioned education. How do we educate better? How do we understand how to educate better? So I guess I could take my own advice, which is from one aspect is like, hey, you customers out there, go and partner with people who have a wide perspective on the world. I think the same should be true about our team as well.
For me, I'll answer this question too, on behalf of my own journey on this. Is that the one thing that I really took me too long to think about as a longtime security guy was to move my mindset from cameras in the traditional sense to being visual sensors that are producing visual data, right? And just to get into that mindset and move into this mindset of building and investing in a visual intelligence platform that can be used in a lot of different ways and not just sort of our traditional context. So yeah, lots of thought and reflection on really where we go and how we capitalize on also going forward. Listen, guys, we're at the bottom of the hour here. Thank you, Adam, Steve, Mark, for your time, your expertise, and sharing with the audience here. It's been good stuff. Thanks for the discussion. Thank you, all of you on the call who have joined us today. Thank you for your time, and have a great rest of your day at Insight. Thank you.